well, I don't know if it's an ex-boyfriend, but I do find it cool that your film had a nice little introduction of a special jury prize from the one and only Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Was that kind of cool to have someone like that make your Ashland experience a whole nother level?
I mean, it was interesting because Ashland was our first film festival, and it was virtual. So it was everyone's kind of introduction into virtual fests. So I was sitting in front of my computer, not knowing what to expect. Me and my boyfriend eating pizza on the couch. I had no idea that I was going to get any sort of jury mention. And when I heard it, and I heard who was giving it, I was sitting there. He looked at me. I looked at him. I was in my pajamas. And we just screamed because we didn't know. Because when everything, early in 2020, heading into 2021, everything was so disparate and separated, and everything was virtual. So I had no idea who was going to be announcing or, involved in the jury process at Ashland, nor did I know that I was going to get a mention. They didn't tell me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was, because everything was pre-recorded. So it was amazing and terrifying and overwhelming, especially too because that was our world premiere was at Ashland.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask a question about, you had Pizza Party out on the circuit during the pandemic.
Yes.
You also were filming during the pandemic.
Yes.
Working a regular job. You're kind of doing everything during the pandemic. What was that like?
I was so grateful to have. It was a double-edged. It was bittersweet. Is the metaphor I'm going for now, because I was so happy and thrilled and felt so lucky to have Pizza Party in the circuit while I was at home, because I was constantly doing interviews. I was constantly, involved in talking to people. There was so much happening in the virtual sphere. At the same time, it was really sad and really hard because you meet all these amazing people and you wish that you were, having a glass of wine with them or sitting next to them in a theater and, having those really authentic, casual conversations and really meeting folks. So I think that was something that was really challenging, as it was for everyone, not having the type of robust social life, or especially for artists and filmmakers, that we're used to having, and not being able to meet people and not being able to engage and see other work. Working during the pandemic, I'm very lucky to work for an actor filmmaker. So, it was definitely adjustment because we were both kind of out of work for a while because we both freelanced too. But she was such a huge support system and was really encouraging of also my writing process as I was going into the second film, Oletta, which is my next short, which is the second film I've ever made, which is kind of crazy. But that process we did this summer, and we ended up being lucky in a sweet spot in Los Angeles where the COVID numbers were really low, and that was a blessing in its own. But we had to take all of the COVID safety protocols. It was a SAG shoot, so everyone was tested every single day. We were all masked. It was, we had to account extra budgetary elements for that, and we knew that we were going to have to fundraise specifically for COVID stuff, and PPE and all of and making sure everyone was safe. But ultimately, it was it felt just as beautiful, felt just as exciting. There were new challenges along the way, but ultimately, it was even more rewarding to have made that film, my next film, during COVID. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, we did it. We did a thing, and that is it's something to be proud of and acknowledge, and all of the artists that were involved, because it's hard to make stuff right now. It's scary. So
I'm curious, with Pizza Party, where did you film? And where did you find that space where all the ladies are in? It's kind of got a unique feel to it. It's open.
So that is in my hometown of Montclair, New Jersey. Yeah, so I grew up in Jersey and went to graduate school in California, actually for acting. So I was never planning on being a filmmaker. And then I wrote this script in an acting class. And then everything kind of toppled on its head. So we decided to shoot it in my hometown. One, because we knew we would have the resources of my small community, and there's an amazing festival there, the Montclair Film Festival, and they were really, really supportive of us shooting there, and they were really helpful in helping us find spaces and get permits, and that was, without them, I don't think it would have been able to be possible to even do production. But I wanted it to feel like a place that so many of us can recognize, a place that, doesn't feel like a big city, and that feels very community-based. It's like, this, because it's a film about sexual assault, because it's based on the Larry Nassar trials, and those took place in eastern Michigan, right, in all of these different small towns and large college communities. I wanted it to feel like a space where it's like, oh, this doesn't happen here. So we decided to shoot in my hometown, and then St. Luke's Church is actually down the street from my childhood home. It's a beautiful, beautiful church, and we had toured a lot of places. We had scouted a bunch of places, and when we got up to their choir room, the light was shining in from the trees, and my DP, Demi Waldron, looked at me, and I looked at her, and we were like, yeah. And it felt ethereal. It felt mysterious. It felt like there were ghosts in that space, and that's what I wanted to capture, too. It brought a layer, I think, of the film that I don't think I'd ever realized, and that I hadn't really written into it, which is this kind of dreamy, ghostly nature of it. So that was kind of how that came to be.
It definitely catches your eye, because when I watched it, I was like, where are they?
Yeah.
This is wild. Like, it's not just a blank room.
Yeah.
Like, it was its own character, I felt
it's a
like.
church, too, which is its own thing, doing it in a church choir room where, this is where children are. This is where, there's this recreational activity, right? But it's also in a religious space. There's religious text on the wall if you look really closely. That, to us, was really exciting to have that irony also kind of threaded into the film.
I know it's a tough film because it's about sexual assault, but it's a very motivational movie. It's a very uplifting movie. I was encouraged, especially by the change we see. Can you talk a bit about making a film right now dealing with that subject matter, but not making it... I felt like you turned the script around. It's not just a heartbreaking story that feels repetitive. It's, we have a voice, let's use that now to point the correct finger. Yeah,
I think ultimately the film is about collective courage, right? And how we are stronger in numbers, which I think is a quite universal conversation and universal theme. When I jumped into writing this script, and when I was developing it with Gene Gallerano, who plays Max in the film, co-produced it and was my teacher in drama school. So he was the one who was like, you need to make this thing. One of the things that I was really trying to make sure wasn't happening was that it didn't feel melodramatic. It didn't feel like an after-school special. It didn't feel, it didn't fit into these tropes that I feel like when you think of these sexual assault narrative films, because I'm a survivor as well, and I'm not like that. I don't walk around being like, oh my. Of course, it's really hard. And there are moments where, you have to deal with things when you're a survivor that you never realize. I call it putting the stones in your backpack and climbing up the hill, but you keep going. And I think with this film, I really wanted to add a layer of motivation, collective courage, but also humor, because I wanted people to see that survivors, and also when we talk about survivorship and when we talk about women, and the Me Too movement, right? I feel like there's so much stigma around that that. There's so many opinions around that. And what I really wanted to talk about was that these women are dynamic, they're complex, they are not perfect. And the point is that, you know, we have a lot of questions around, well, why do they speak up now? Why do they speak up now? Well, because when one person kind of throws a stone into the water, it's a ripple effect, right? And it gives people the safety and the ability to be able to speak. And that was really what this thing was about. So,
on a broader spectrum, and especially with your new film as well, women-led filmmaking.
Yes.
How important is it for people to know that there are so many more women filmmakers, but yet we've only just started? I feel like we mentioned earlier about Bentonville, about Gina. Gina always talks about see it, do it, or see it, be it.
Yeah.
How important is it to have women behind the camera, in front of the camera, and it being something that people know about?
Yes. I think it is, I mean, it is the thing, right? And not just women. We're also talking about BIPOC artists, women of color, queer artists. Like, it is, you know, it is so important to, and one of the best advice somebody gave me when I was making this movie was, Tessa, you don't want a crew of exclusively women. You don't want it, because what you want are women in leadership positions, and what you want are men on your set that see women in leadership positions, and when they are asked to, you know, find a new editor or a director or a producer, they go, oh yeah, I know Tessa Slovis, or oh, and it's not, oh yeah, I know this woman. It's, oh yeah, I know this person. I worked with her. She was great, right? And so by putting women in leadership positions, especially behind the camera, in those kinds of environments where there's like so much diversity and so many different types of people, it allows not just audience members, but your own crew, because this whole business is word of mouth, that your own crew members, your PAs, your assistant camera operators, your sound engineers, they see women at the top, they see women leading, and they go, oh, well, that was great. I'm gonna hire her. And that to me is the most important thing. And I think, you know, I've gotten a lot of pushback about being very, very diligent and passionate about hiring other women. People are like, well, you know, like, you can't say that, you can't do that. I was like, well, yes, we can, because when 1% of, you know, feature films, blockbuster feature films, are being directed by women, even though there are thousands and thousands of female filmmakers who are completely capable and so brilliant in this industry, you know, yes, like, I really do believe that, like, it is so important, especially as a director, as a female director, to make sure that that is a priority.
I love that you brought up the diversity side of it, because you yourself, I think you call yourself a cashew, is that correct?
Yes, I'm a cashew. That's hilarious.
Can you talk to us about being someone who knows multiple cultures, who knows that there are other ways to look at people rather than just the physical? You yourself have grown up in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up at the intersection of Latin culture. My mom's from South America, from Argentina, and my dad grew up in New Jersey, you know, and was like a New Jersey Jewish guy, and she was Roman Catholic. They actually met in film school, so they're both filmmakers. And, you know, I think growing up at the intersection of that culture, I mean, so many of the women that I write, and so many of the women that I hope to write and that I'm kind of cultivating ideas around are at the intersection of different identities, whether that is sexuality, whether that is body identity, you know, how we deal with body diversity, whether that is, you know, gender or ethnic intersection. I write a lot of Jewish characters that are also Latina, so keep a lookout for that. Those are you know, those are things that are in the forefront of my mind. But growing up in that way, you know, I was both a child of an immigrant and a child of somebody that grew up, you know, middle class in New Jersey. And those different, his grandmother owned a laundromat in Queens. And those two cultures couldn't be more different. But to see my parents find such common language through love and through mutual respect and through art, I mean, it was very, very, very lucky. Very lucky. And I do not take that for granted.
I love that you brought up the diversity side of it, because you yourself, I think you call yourself a cashew, is that correct?
Yes, I'm a cashew. That's hilarious.
But can you talk to us about being Can you talk a bit about Oletta and its own look at diversity, and very timely, in fact, for what this country is going through, especially George Floyd on. It's become important to talk about these things. What's it like making a film about a subject matter where people can make a difference, but maybe they don't, and it can have ramifications?
Yeah, so Oletta is a film that came out of, I co-wrote it with one of my best friends, Bukola Ogunmola, who's an amazing actress and an amazing writer. And it came out of conversations that she and I, as interracial best friends, had, right after the murder of George Floyd. And a lot of it was about white female complicity. So ultimately this film, as two women, I identify as a Latinx white woman and she is a black woman, like what we felt like we could talk about was, for both of us, right, the intersection of gender for me and race for her, and how those two things relate, and the conversations around white women at this time, and white women turning a blind eye. So really this film it's about a fictional event of brutality, but really it's about the person that could have done something. And ultimately we've been talking about this a lot, and who knows, who knows if it's going to be received well, because it is very penetrating, it is very straightforward. Our goal is to make this a film that women, specifically white women, watch and are like, oh my God, I've done this. And that really, because my goal always as a filmmaker is to have you have a moment of self-reflection, have this, I come from a theater background, so, Brechtian in a way, make you feel complicit, right? So that you in turn can then look at your own life and go, I've done this, and how do I now recalibrate and move forward? So that's really what this film is about. And it is kind of an amalgam of all of these different events that were, I hate the word Karen, but it is kind of related to that moment. So it is a white female perpetrator and then a white female bystander in this event of a young black man going in for a job interview and being told he can't be there. It's also very musical, and there's a lot of dream sequence, because I love Argentinian, love a good dream, love a good magic realism, and we're now in post-production for it, and it is a really kind of similar to Pizza Party. It is a fresh kind of perspective on a theme that could easily get quite melodramatic, and this is saying no, we want to hold our audience accountable, we want to hold our actors and our characters accountable, and that's what this film, I hope, will do. We'll see. It looks cool, so
definitely. I love that you brought up theater.
Yeah.
And that we've been talking about identity. Did you play a female Macduff?
I did. I played a female Macduff in LA last year.
How important is it to mess with, I love this new, it's not new, people have been messing with the classics in that form, but it adds so much more to the how many times have we seen Macbeth? You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You've been in Macbeth quite a few times.
Yeah, I've been in it multiple times.
It's so unique to be a part of something that can switch Shakespeare or a classic like that on its head. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, that was also luck of the draw too, because I went into that audition. It was in LA. It was right after I had graduated from graduate school, right before I was making Pizza Party at the same time I was in rehearsals for Macbeth. And I know I left for the weekend to go shoot in New Jersey from rehearsal, and then had to come back and go back into rehearsal. It was crazy. It was amazing, but it was nuts. I went into that audition and I was like, I've done this play so many times. I've played the witches. I've done it all. I've worked on Lady M. Can I audition for Macduff or for one of the male characters? And luckily the director, Alyssa Escalante, was incredible, and she was like, yes, of course. And I went in and I read for Macduff, and it was just something worked and something clicked, and it was an incredibly powerful thing too. And I believe in Shakespeare, it is so important to swap genders in those roles because, one, Shakespeare's performances were always done by men playing women, so why can't it be the opposite, right? But also because those male characters are so nuanced. Shakespeare was writing from a male gaze, from a male perspective. He was writing what he knew. So the male characters tend to be a little bit more nuanced, a lot of it nuanced, especially in Mackers, than the female characters. So of course, an actor who's just gotten out of graduate school is like, I want to play the thing that I can sink my teeth into, really, really sink my teeth into. And that was really important to me. And I think it is crucial for women to walk into a space, and it is hard because we've been socialized not to do that, to walk into a space and say, hey, I know you were thinking this, but can I try it? What if we tried it? And just to see. And the worst thing that happens is someone says no. That's what I'm learning in this industry is like the worst thing that happens to me is someone goes, no, sorry. Or like, that's crazy. Leave. I'm like, okay, cool. Great.
How impactful has having an acting background helped you as a director? And also, you have the luxury of also having parents in the industry, so I think you obviously grown up, you know the nuances, but that acting background must bridge the gap.
The acting background is the directing. And I can't. It's tricky because I didn't go to film school. I grew up very lucky to observe film sets. I always avoided being a part of the film industry because of probably some weird, I don't want to be involved in this thing. It's like the family business. It's like anything. If your parent, works in retail or, is a designer, the kids are like, no, get me away from that. It's like the same with film. You resent your parents like crazy no matter what. And so I loved acting. I was a musical theater actor, and theater was the thing for me. And I thought I was going to do New York and Broadway, and that was going to be my life. It ended up differently, which is great. And of course, I have the luxury and the extreme gift of also having more so a film community, people I grew up around and filmmakers I get to see. And I'm lucky with my dad, who's an amazing director of photography. His career didn't really hit until he was in his 50s. And to me, I'm like, okay, that to me shows me as an example of this is a nonlinear career. This takes a long time. It is the step by step, cog by cog, So it has given me the privilege of knowing that it takes time and not rushing it, even though as much as I want to. But I think as an actor, acting goes into everything I do as a director. I understand what it's like to be an actor in front of a camera on big sets and small. I understand what it's like to put yourself in vulnerable positions. I understand what it's like when you're so personally connected to a character that it's you. So one, it allows me to be able to have that common language with actors and make them feel comfortable and know how to also prep them to make them feel comfortable. But it also, I think in terms of working with a crew, one of the things I've really had to learn how to do is say, okay, I don't know the technical language for this, but this is what I want it to feel like, to look like. This is what I want us to, as an audience, to experience. And then Demi Waldron for Pizza Party, this incredible DP, she goes, oh, you want this, 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 and this. And I was like, what? She's like, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, great. You're going to show me what those are, and you're going to explain to me why. And we're gonna go through this. So I think it has given me the communication skills being an actor. It has given me the ability to empathize and understand acting as an important part of the machine, but also has really made me respect, this is the big thing about filmmaking, that 90% of the work is before the actor even gets on their mark. And that is, every actor should be behind a camera at some point, even if it's on your iPhone. It makes you realize that 90%, 95% of it is process. And as a theater person, that's such a beautiful thing to me because I'm so process oriented. So yeah.
Very nice. I hope this question doesn't come across as weird, but it's knowing that you have now given us stories that you were connected to in some way.
Sure.
how vulnerable was the experience for you?
Yeah.
How cathartic? How much did you grow because of the process of doing what you've been able to do?
Yeah, I think, well, in terms of Pizza Party, catharsis is a tricky one because I have really learned how to separate Tessa the person from Tessa the writer. Even though a lot of the script is personal and is based on me, I think in the process I was very passionate about, like, you have to be the strong one here. Like, you cannot crumble. No matter how hard it is to watch these women say these words, like, you have to be the pillar. And I will say the first thing I did on the first day of filming was gather everyone and say, if you feel unsafe, if you feel triggered, if you feel uncomfortable, if anything, if you just want to talk, if you need a breath, I want you to I don't care if we're in the middle of a take, raise your hand and say, I need a second, and talk to me or talk to one of the many crew members. Again, it was really advantageous to have a lot of women on that set. There were a lot of survivors on that set. And then everybody in that film, in the hiring process when we were crewing up, every single person that we interviewed that was on that set had a personal relationship to either themselves being a survivor or a survivor in their family, a sister, mother, brother, friend, relative, that they had seen it happen to or had an experience with. So that was also one of those things that, like, I'm reluctant to call it special because it's tragic, but at the same time made the film so much more powerful. And the process was like one of the most amazing, beautiful, nurturing things I've ever done in my life. But I think, I always come from it from a lens of, like, empathy, and also, I think it's really important. I think Greta Gerwig does this really well. It's, like, really important to nurture your set, nurture your people, nurture your crew, nurture your cast. And I think as a survivor talking about this story, I was able to go in from the lens of, like, hey, like, do you want to talk? No? Okay, great. I'm going to give you your space. Or, hey, let me sit and listen. I think that actually the most cathartic or the hardest part has been when many women have reached out to me after seeing the film and have shared their personal stories with me. That has been those are the moments where I've been, it's been hard, because that's when I see how universal this is. And I was even reluctant. I was like, does anyone want to see another movie about sexual assault? And then I was like, oh my God, like, we are craving this. We need it. We need to be able to feel understood and seen. And there have been many, many women who have reached out to me over my festival circuit privately and said, this was really important to me, and this is very similar to what happened to me. And that has been the cathartic and the emotional element of this. So
that's very special. Yeah. So to switch completely different side of it.
Yeah.
Why is a New Jersey bagel better than a New York bagel?
Oh my gosh, no. So I swear it's the same water, but they do it different. And because I think it's, like, first off, like, I know this is, you have, like, real New Jersey Jews making your bagels. I mean, like, you can't, like, the best bagel place I swear, the world is Hot Bagels Abroad on Valley Road in Montclair, New Jersey. And I've been going there since high school, and they have iced coffee with the frozen ice cubes, and it's, like, so dirty and so good. And those bagels are perfectly crispy on the outside and really, really dense and fluffy on the inside. I also think the New Jersey bagel market is a hidden gem, so it's not as busy. Like, you go to a busy bagel spot in New York, and they're just kind of like, there's no love in it. They're just rushing it out. You go to a small town bagel spot in Bloomfield, New Jersey, or by the shore, or in Montclair, or Cedar Grove, and they're, like, putting some serious love into those bagels.
So what do you put on your bagel then?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, It really depends on if I'm hungover. If I'm hungover...
That's key, because bagel shops can be open late.
Oh, yes. So if I'm hungover, it is like either a Taylor ham, egg and cheese on an everything bagel or a bacon, egg and cheese on an everything bagel. But if I'm just like going classic, like making my grandfather proud, it would be like, and we do this all the time at home, it'd be like the schmear. So it's just cream cheese, schmear, scallion, cream cheese, schmear, lox, gravlax, capers, tomato, red onion, and you don't toast it.
I was waiting for the don't.
Yeah, you do not toast a bagel. If you have to toast it, it's not a good bagel.
Yeah, it loses all its aroma. I was honestly the one question I was like, oh, I got to get to this question.
I am so passionate about bagels and pizza because I also now live in LA, and a lot of Los Angelinos try to make you think that they know good pizza and bagels in LA, and they don't. They just don't. And I've been there for 5 years, and they just don't. Never get used to it.
Well, Tessa, thank you for the wonderful chat, but thank you for the courage in diving into directing.
Thank you.
I think it's made all the difference. I definitely think it's what you should be in. And I can't wait to see the next steps. Maybe writing a feature, maybe a future
That's next, yeah.
Anything you can tell us about what's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so I am in post-production for Oletta. We are hoping to start the festival circuit with that late 2022 into 2023. And that's going to be a much longer, way more visual, not just one location, kind of very, very different feel of a film. After that, my hope is to start shadowing. I've got a couple of things in the pipeline for shadowing other female directors, preferably, and then I am then going on the feature route. I'm going to try and write a feature and hopefully see what happens. See if anybody be interested in helping me make the thing. I have an idea that I'm really excited about that I will not disclose quite yet.
Well, I definitely hope the festival circuit opens up and we get to see you all around the country. Tessa, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.